the title of the talk is I don't know anything, but thank goodness I have wisdom because, the thing about it is I was never the smartest guy in the room. And to my credit or to my benefit, it kind of worked out because I never really cared what was going in my mind. Like my wife always said, aren't you a little nervous to do this? Or aren't you scared to speak to this person? But it never occurred to me that I should be simply because I may have a feeling inside. So my wife always says, your ignorance is one of the most blissful things about you. And I understand what she means.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, me too. There was a time at school when we were reading Animal Farm. I don't know if you ever read it. And all the pigs were the ones that were very dim, and and I was like, I used to say to the teacher, but I really much prefer to be like them. And she was horrified, absolutely horrified. But now I know actually it probably would have been better. Not because there's anything wrong with intelligence, not except, like you say, it can get in the way. Too much thinking can get in the way.
Yeah, and I can give you can I give an example of
Yeah,
something that
sure.
happened when I had a huge insight? So one time where it looked very important was when I was going to do a public speaking talk for 200 real estate investors. It was a marketing thing that I was getting into, and I was driving there and I was 10 minutes away. And this was a very big deal for the person that put it on and for me. I was about 10 minutes away and I was so freaked out. I wished that I got into a car accident while I was driving, but instead I didn't. I threw up on myself and I pulled over and I called the guy and said, I can't speak. I'm a mess. And he was very upset at me. I was upset at myself. And the following week, I wanted to know what scared me. I used to take all these courses and all this stuff about learning how to public speak, and I wondered why it didn't help me that moment. So the following week, I didn't go to speak. I went there just to see when people arrived because the show hadn't started yet. The speaker wasn't coming. I wanted to see how many people had to come in before I was afraid, technically afraid. So two people came and I was like, I can handle speaking to two people. Six people showed up and I said, ooh, that would kind of make me scared if I had to speak today. Is about the 12th person that walked in is when I realized, wow, do you hear that? It sounds like bloody murder. That's my daughter and the nanny chasing each other. Um, this is what happens in real life, right? Um, it's about the 12th person that I realized, oh my goodness, I'm making up a number to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Like it really blew my mind that it wasn't an actual fear of something like the number 12. It's that I've decided at 12 is the right amount of number of people in here that I will make up. So I realized what I used to do is I would go and find books about how to not be afraid of the number 12. And it just started to sound really silly and that dissolved. And then I wonder what else I've made the number 12 with, right? Certain relationships. When I was in high school, I used to do that with tests. I would freak myself out because I have 36 test questions coming up tomorrow. So the number 36 was definitely more scarier than 35. And I went, man, I wonder if that would have been useful for me in so many aspects of my life. And so now I call it the number 12 problem. Is this a number 12 problem? Am I making up a number or an idea people have the Monday blues, right? That they're deathly afraid of on Sunday evening. Monday shows up and they decide, oh, this is scary, even though Monday hasn't even shown up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we do that all the time. All the time. If you're not recognizing it. I wonder how many people, I wonder with people listening, for example, what they can notice that they do that on.
Yeah, what's your number 12? I actually did that with Mondays as well. Mondays were a scary, I'm now looking back, I really wasn't as dumb as I thought. Maybe I was too smart for my own good. I did have a lot of things. The one time that Monday, I had my Monday blues. I remember Sunday evening, I was getting anxious again because I was getting myself ready for Monday. And it was to a point where at the time I used to believe my job was very stressful. So Sundays I prep myself up with anxiety. And I remember I had set my alarm. I woke up getting ready for my day and being anxious with it. And my wife waking me up and saying, "Honey, it's Sunday. What are you doing?" I had done it on a Saturday. I was so caught up with the days, I messed it up. But it just went to show that Mondays by nature cannot be stressful. It couldn't have been the Mondays because I did this on a Saturday and freaked myself out for a Sunday. And that was another moment where I went, wow, I do this a lot. And I wonder how many other people do this with life, where they make up a problem and try to use the same energy of thought to alleviate a problem they created in the first place. I wonder if that had any implications in our life. And so what was cool about that is I didn't need a strategy for the Monday blues. I got to see it on a deeper level for myself, that how much of that, if not all of it, I was making up.
Mm.
And so it was such an eye-opening thing for me. And and it catches me time and time again, which is cool. And that's where wisdom went. What this whole idea is I don't know much, but thank goodness I have wisdom. Wisdom is the thing that makes you aware of what you just did, what just caught you, what just made you go, what am I doing with my thinking? Why am I taking it so seriously? And we, if we're in tune to it, we start to catch it more often. And that's one of the hopes of seeing this.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about how that applies to fear of, you said about test results, but about test questions, but there's so many students doing exams right now, around about now. And I've seen a lot of stuff about them getting really anxious about, really nervous about it. In fact, I was talking to one of them the other day. He isn't anxious because he understands exactly what you're saying. And he used to be, and now he can see that he's just making it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing with tests or anything. I remember when I was, say, I didn't go to college, so I have to go back to my high school days. And I remember when it was time to take a test and I'd look around, not everybody had the same experience about test taking. There were some people that didn't care about the test. There were other people that you could see their hand shaking while they're, about to fill out their name. And there was other people that zipped through the test and were the first to take it out and go take a nap in the back while they were waiting for everybody. And it just made me realize, if it's not the test, what is the variable that gives everybody a different experience about the test, right?
Mm.
And I started to see now, as I started looking deeper into this understanding of where our experience comes from, it can only come with the thinking that we have, right? Now, there are some people that have this idea that this test means who I am as a person, what it means for my future self, and all this stuff. Now, do you think that person may have a different experience about their test than somebody else that says, oh, this is just another test out of the 100 tests I'm going to maybe have in my life, and I'm either going to do good or I'm not going to do good on this test, or well, I don't know, is it well or good? I'm not sure. See, they're one of those, right? And this is just one of the many. I can always go back and learn more or fix it or correct it. This is not the end all. And I wonder if that has any implications. Now, this isn't telling you that you should do it one way or another. All I'm simply sharing is that based on how we see that experience, we're going to feel differently about it, right?
Mm.
Now, the question then, of course, becomes, well, what do we do if we're freaked out? Okay, great. I get everything you're saying, Amir. That sounds all good and dandy. But what do we do if I'm one of those people that freaks out about it, right? Now, good news and bad news is I don't have a very good answer in the sense that here's what you should do. But the better news is that if you start to look in this direction that I'm pointing to, you will start to get a deeper understanding. If by just immersing yourself in this talk, as well as the other people that you've interviewed, that maybe you're looking in the wrong direction as to where our fears are coming from, where the well-being is coming from. Because here's an indication that it may not be your test. If the test is what's making you afraid, then how are you possibly afraid of the test when the test is 3 days from now? If the test is not in front of you, how can you possibly be so worked up and anxious about this test? Surely there must be a different component. And I'm guessing the thing that's always around you, whether it's making you lose sleep or making you wake up anxious, is thought. That must be the foundational thing that must be connected to what's happening and not necessarily the test. And looking in that direction and seeing if that's fundamentally true for you starts opening up the doors of how we experience our reality. At least that's what I've seen.
Mm. Yeah. And then, like you say, once I understood that it was about thought, I only understood it to some extent, because when I first learned about it, it was all about, oh, so what do I do with my thought now then? How do I change that? And how must I? And I spent years with all the effort of trying to change my thoughts and trying to make them. And of course you can't. Now it seems so crazy when I look at it. Like, how can you possibly change a thought that you already had, for example, and yeah, okay, so I might be able to choose a thought briefly, but I don't have any control over all the other thoughts that come in. So trying to change thoughts is even more exhausting, actually.
Yeah. And it gives us one less job to do when we're not trying to take a test tomorrow and manage the thinking around the test as well. Now that's one less thing. I actually had a really good conversation with my best friend who's the captain of he's a firefighter. He's a captain in my city. And I asked him, I said, what do you do when you're afraid or you're nervous and you show up at a scene? And he looked at me dead in the eye. He says, I'm nervous and I still do my job. I'm fearful and I still can do my job. And he said, you just learn to realize the state of mind you're in doesn't necessarily reflect what you can and cannot do. And the more you see that deeply, it's not that I'm no longer afraid when I do it, it's that it starts to matter less as I'm doing what I'm doing. And it turns out the more we're in life, the less it matters that our state of mind, which will fluctuate, is anything more than where our thinking is in that moment.
Mm.
So it was a real eye opener for me, because I thought once you're a firefighter, you're no longer afraid. And he said it's quite the opposite. We're still afraid, but it's not I'm afraid and therefore I can't do my job. It's I'm afraid, period. And I'm going to go do my job. Right. And so that to me was a huge insight for me, because now I've realized throughout my days, I'm insecure about my marriage, but that doesn't stop me from kissing my wife. I'm insecure about being a good father sometimes, but that doesn't stop me when my daughter is crying to hold her. And so I'm starting to catch on more and more that my state of mind about my thinking isn't a direct relationship to what I can actually do. Now, if that little bit of information is useful and you're taking a test and you are a little flustered, you're not going to take the test and say, oh my goodness, I'm flustered. I need to calm down. I need to stop freaking out. Oh, now I only have 50 minutes to do this instead of an hour because now I'm trying to manage. Well, that will drive you nuts. You're afraid. You're going to take the test, and in a moment, you may have a clear mind. In a moment, you may be thinking about popcorn. In a moment, you'll maybe thinking about the beach in a minute, and none of that stuff is relevant to what you can do in this moment. And that's brilliant. That's the beauty of the design.
What also came to my mind just then was that we get so worried about worrying. We think we shouldn't be feeling like this and we shouldn't be feeling like that, and yet we go to the cinema, we watch stuff on video, we even go to theme parks and pay to get scared, right? Yeah. And yet when it happens in real life, we think we shouldn't be feeling that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And And the thing that I would say that I've gotten really better is I stopped talking to myself as much because for the most part, our psychology, like psychology in our Western world, is about tell me what you're telling yourself and let's see if we can have a better conversation or a different conversation, right? And what I'm pointing to isn't let's have a better thing to say to ourselves when we're speaking to ourselves. It's that when you start to see the person you think is speaking to you is just an energy of thought, it stops mattering what that energy is saying, right? Because if my energy, and I'll tell you, I've been in, I took a drug that really messed my body up, and I had some severe self-talk that was extremely negative. Really strange things were being said, but thank goodness I knew enough to know that as long as that person that I think is speaking to me, no one else is hearing them except me, I don't necessarily have to answer to them, which is a kind of a cool thing. In the Middle East, we have a saying that you know in the Middle Eastern culture, if someone stays with you and stays, like my cousins want to stay with me or my uncle, right? The thing about it is they will stay as long as they can. If and you can say no, you can stay, but we're kind of saying it like you can only stay for 2 days. But if we can't obviously kick out our relatives. But what we've realized in Persian culture is that if there's no more food in the fridge, they'll get the hint. We start to say, I am so sorry, we need to go to the grocery store. If I know you're hungry, and they'll go, oh, you know what, no worries, it's time for me to go. The same thing with thought is, as long as there's no one to feed them, they have nowhere to go but to go, right? And when we're taking the test and we're sitting there going, oh my goodness, I need a feed. Okay, I hear you loud and clear. Yes, you're nervous. Okay, what do you want me to do about it? I need to think positive thoughts. No, I shouldn't think positive. So why do I feel guilty for having these? And all of a sudden, we're feeding the relatives that are in our mind, right? And so it's not a matter of like, well, how do I change it? It's that it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter. And there's some value to that. And if they're not being fed, they will go somewhere else, or they will just stop mattering. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to stop happening. There's a difference. It just stops mattering. And there's tremendous value in that, at least from what I've seen.
Mm. Yeah, me too. So, Amir, I'm curious. You said that you didn't go to college.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a lot of people around, a lot of young people around at the moment, I know, also deciding what they're going to do with their lives. And going to college seems to be an important thing for a lot of people. So was that a choice of yours to not go, or how did that come about? And did it make a difference for you?
Well, it was, for me, I had a family business. I own a chain of restaurants here in San Diego. So I had to choose between me going to a family business or me going to college. I was a straight A student in high school. I got a very good SAT score. I had opportunities with several scholarships. I was a you know a very straight edge student. So the opportunity for college was there for me, and I just made a choice and a decision to go to the family business. And it was I'll tell you something, and this may or may not be useful. It was difficult to the extent that I had to make a choice, but it wasn't difficult because I knew that at any moment I could make a different choice. So the only time my choices felt like very constricting and hard is when I thought that this was the only thing I could do. And here's an example that I give my clients is, if I give you 10 quarters and I tell you to go to to go to the arcade game and you have 10 quarters to play, you're going to be very cautious as to what games you're going to play and how long you're going to get to play. Now, if I tell you, look, you don't need quarters, you just hit the start button, you have an infinite amount of times you can play this game, it's going to have a different feel to it. What we do in our world is we believe we have only 10 options, even less, sometimes two options, two quarters. You can either play this game or you can play this restaurant game or the college game. You better pick, because you know what? Once the game is over, you have no quarters. Now that sounds absolutely terrifying to me. And if those are the options that I was given, I don't quite know what I would do at this point. But I knew at a young age, if I play and I lose the game, I got another quarter. I can play this new game. You know what? I've opened up 7 restaurants at my age. When I was 28 years old, I had a chain of 7 restaurants, and now I'm down to 3. And people say, "Oh my goodness, what happened? Did you close them?" I said, "I just played a new game." It wasn't a bad thing for me. I wanted to go down to 3. I have a family now. Now, when my daughter grows up, I may want to play a different game and open up a new restaurant. But I know that I have an infinite amount of quarters to play with this. And that allows me the freedom to try all sorts of things, right? There's nothing stopping me from going to college if I want to now. I can play the college game. I can open up a different business game. I can do all sorts of go and retire game and go travel with my wife for a year. But that's also the beauty of when we constrict ourselves from thought and think that, just like I said, I had the 12, the scary 12, when 12 people walk into the room fear. Well, I used to have the choice fear. Periodically I have the choice fear, but for some reason I didn't when I was younger. And so that wasn't necessarily a problem for me. So for those that are listening here that are going to college, you have a chance to play and play again. It doesn't look like it when we're 22 years old. It looks like this is the only game in town, whether that's in a relationship. Because when I was 18, I thought I was going to marry that girl, that my high school crush. Well, we ended up becoming good friends, and I married someone else that I absolutely adore. But at the time, it looked like that was the only game in town. I only had one quarter. This is the person I'm marrying. We didn't. And that's what you start to see. You start to see you have an infinite game to play.
Yeah. So that makes it sound like, well, apart from the scary bit about that you had about public speaking, it sounds like it was fairly easy for you. You think? Maybe now, though. Maybe now, you're running restaurants is not the only thing you do, right?
No, so I do several things. I have a lot of quarters that I'm playing with. So I have my restaurants. I work at a recovery center. I do coaching and I do public speaking, and I've written 5 books, 6 books now, totaling 6 books. So depending on the day that you're speaking to me, I may be at the recovery center, I may be working with coaching or doing webinars with beautiful people like you and beautiful attendees. So it really depends on the day.
Okay. And so what do you do at the recovery center?
Interestingly enough, what's cool about the recovery center, I speak to groups of men and women who maybe had abused substances, so substance abuse, drug and alcohol. And I don't have a background. As I told you, I didn't go to college, so I don't have a background in substance abuse, nor did I abuse substances in the past. And I remember someone in my group asked, "Well, what gives you the right to come sit with us and speak about substance abuse, right? You never abused substances, so you don't have a history, nor did you go to school for this." And I said, "This is the best news in town, folks. Today I'm not talking to somebody that has substance abuse. Today I'm talking to people, because whether you've abused substances, whether you're 10 years old, whether you're 50 years old, we all work the same. It doesn't matter your past. It doesn't matter what you've done. We use the same energy to experience life. What I'm sharing with you is an equal opportunity understanding. Life only works one way, whoever you are, whether you're homeless or a Fortune 500 CEO of a company, we all feel the experiences the same. We all experience the same, thought the same. So today you guys can, and I said today you guys can take the day off from calling yourself alcoholics, substance abuse, abusers, or bad parents, or deadbeat dads. You can take all of that off the table. Today I'm speaking to the human, and that I can do every single day. And and today, while we're maybe talking to college kids or kids that are talking with tests, there is no such thing as that. We're speaking to human beings about a human being thing that happens in experience. When we have thoughts that scare us, we feel it in our body as fear. When we have thoughts that we don't think about much at all, we feel calm and relaxed. Now, whether you abuse substances or whether you go to college, we all experience that energy the same. And so, in that respect, we are all the same. And that's why it doesn't matter whoever we speak to, we're speaking the language of humans. And that's what's up for grabs with this conversation.
Mm. Mm. And what about if people just can't decide what to do next, where to go, what to do?
You cut out. If they can't do what? Say that again.
If they can't decide what to do with their lives, say they maybe they're finishing college and they can't decide what to do with their lives. Where do you go with that?
Oh, that's a really good question. What do you do when you can't decide? Well, you're talking to a person that's very indecisive a lot. So this is a really good question, and this comes back to what my wife always says is the first thing that happens, I say, honey, I am so confused. I have no idea where to start. And the first thing I would say is, great, start there. Like, I'm confused and I'm going to make a decision anyway, right? Because at the end of the day, a confusion is just where you're at. Just like if I'm confused about how good of a parent I am, it's not stopping me from kissing my daughter. It's just telling me that I have a state of mind that I'm experiencing in this moment. So there's a couple things or many things you can do. And this is where the quarters come in. You have an infinite amount of things you can do regardless of the state of mind you're in. You have an infinite amount of things you can do regardless of the state of mind you're in. That means if you're confused, you can still send out job applications to 5 places. If you're confused, you can still go to a business that you really love and speak about what they do in that business. If you're confused, you can still go and get a mentor. If you're confused, you can still talk to a professor that you really like the stuff in that particular field and see what makes sense to you in that particular field. In other words, your confusion does not dictate what you can and cannot do in the world. It just simply states that you're confused in that moment. Now, I wouldn't, if for me, what I've realized is that if I wait until, let me back up. What I do know about my state of mind, that it will change. So I don't try to fix something that moves and takes different forms. What I do know to be true is the more I'm in life, the more things I end up doing in life. The more I'm in thought, the less I tend to do because I'm trying to manage something that is very difficult to manage because it moves. And you will realize, and this time and time again, for those that are in college, think about people that go on first dates, right? If you're in college and you've gone on your first date, the only reason a first date may feel different than a second or third and fourth is because we typically bring a lot of what on the first date? A lot of thinking. And then next thing you know, what do we say? Oh, that first date was kind of not that good because I I I didn't know the right words to say, but it wasn't because it was a first date, is because we made an idea around the first date, just like I did around 12 people coming into a room. And so The reason a second, third, or fourth date typically goes a little bit different, it's not because the person that's sitting in front of you is now coming up with better questions or you are. It's that thinking doesn't matter as much. And even if you have it, you start to notice, yeah, I'm a little nervous still here, but you know what? This person seems awfully nice. Maybe by hanging out with her or him, it's not that big of a deal with how I feel. And we intrinsically know that. We intrinsically know that. And we know that it's like you asking me, well, what do I do if I don't know, you know, if, if I should go on a date or not? You know, what if I don't know? Well, you go and try it out because that's the only, honestly, that's the only way that I know how to do things. And so what that does though, why that's the beauty of what we're sharing is you start to see that in life you can do whatever you want to, regardless of the thinking you're in. And that has huge implications on our lives. I wish someone told me that when I was very young, that how I feel is not a direct expression to what I can and cannot do in life. Because I thought it was. So I spent a tremendous amount of time trying to make myself feel from a level feeling of, you know, you hear these people say, do you feel like you're at a 3 and you want to get to an 8? I will show you how. Well, I've realized I can do a lot of stuff when I'm feeling like a number 3, level 3, whatever that made up number is that people give me or that I've given myself. I can do just as well at a number 2 than I can at a number 8 because I can do things in life, just like the firefighter can in that fear.
And you can do a lot more if you're not stopping thinking about, I shouldn't be feeling like this.
Yes,
It's like,
absolutely.
that's the biggest thing that I found. I spent years thinking I shouldn't feel like this. Years and years thinking I shouldn't feel like this. And when I think about what it did to my relationships, you know, my relationships were a disaster because I used to think, oh, I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. So that must mean, you know, even if I had been feeling fantastic the day before, we'd been having a wonderful time on this particular day, for no reason that I had any idea, you know, there was no obvious reason for it. I just had an uncomfortable feeling. And I would think that that meant something. I was convinced that that meant something. And it meant, oh, I have to look and see what this is about. And it must be about, he's doing something wrong, or he's not the right one for me, or he needs to change, or I need to change, or, you know, it's so much of that stuff going on and on and on and on and on. And yeah, and that used to bring my mood down more, and then I'd think about more stuff, and then of course we weren't getting on so well together. and now, and then when I eventually found out years and years and years later that those feelings didn't mean anything, they just meant that there was some thought going through my mind in that moment that I happened to be at some level taking seriously. And I didn't have to take any notice of it. And of course, you know, I would, and when I look back now, I can see that some days I would feel good and other days about the relationship and so on. Some days I'd feel really good and feel really close. And then other days I wouldn't. But it was nothing to do with him or the relationship or even me, really. It was just what was just part of the natural flow. And like someone said yesterday, it's like we in normal life there's a flow all the time. We breathe in and out. Our heart rate goes up and down. You know, it's like, why would we think it's odd that our moods go up and down and that our feelings go up and down? And don't have to find a reason for it. Don't have to think, oh, that's important, I shouldn't be feeling like this. Yeah. I wish somebody told me that a long time ago. I can't hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
The good news now is, you know, there was a moment where I went, I wish someone would have told me this, and I got back into my head about, oh man, how many opportunities I lost because I was in my head, and how many things I could have changed. But I realized something, and this brought me back to feeling at peace. Well, that's just thought too. And
Yep.
I have a brand new quarter, and I can play right now again a new game. It's not like because of the things that happened, I'm that old self and I've ruined my life because of it. It's like, how grateful that I know now what I know, and cool, let's play a new game. And I remember Alan Watts, and I'll never forget, he had said, um, you're not obligated to you're not obligated to be the person you were 5 minutes ago, right? And I've changed that, and I've changed that to, you're not obligated to be the person you were one thought ago. You're not even obligated to be that person. So even if you were the I'm afraid of being a test taker, well, as soon as that thought changes, you're no longer that person. I'm no longer the person that's scared of the number 12, even though that seemed so real to me years ago. The number 12 doesn't scare me, right? Now, there are other things that may scare me. And as I get a deeper understanding that the only thing that I'm afraid of is that particular thought, now I get to play a different game again, over and over again. And so, yeah, so even the idea that, oh man, I wish I knew what I knew then,
Yeah.
that's not even a bothersome thought for me anymore. Because I get to play, I have what I'm grateful for is that I have something that I wake up to every morning when I wake up from my bed that gives me thought to give rise to this reality. As long as that's there, then I'm grateful because I know a new thought is available. A new thought will eventually always arise. It always does. And that's what the gift is with what I'm sharing, with what you're sharing, and what the previous guests I think are sharing, that we are thought generating machines that want us to look to the infinite capacity that we have available to us. And wow,
Absolutely.
what a beautiful thing to be able to see.
Yeah. So while we're just taking a pause, let's just have a look and see if anyone has any questions anywhere or any comments at all. I'll just see if there's anything over here either. So that I can't see any questions on YouTube either.
We have one.
Everyone's keeping very quiet today.
Would sometimes instead of jumping in straight, would sometimes instead of jumping straight away, maybe one could dip their toe in first, right?
Yeah.
That's do whatever you want. It's your quarter. It's your game. Absolutely. And that's that. What a great question, right? Could you dip your toe in first? You can do whatever you want, and that's what's nice about what I'm saying. I'm not saying here are your infinite amount of quarters. Only play the karate kung fu game. I'm saying if you want to play the dip your foot in first game, play that game. If it's go on a walk and kind of reflect on the options I have, play that game. If it's I'm going to go head deep into this corporation and see what I can do game, you can play that. What the idea behind what we're sharing is that when you have an understanding that you have an infinite amount of quarters versus 5 quarters, you're going to play a different game. That's all I'm saying. And when you have 5 quarters, every game you play has a different feeling because you're saying, ooh, after this, I only have 4 quarters left, 3 quarters left. Ooh, I only have 1 quarter left.
Mm.
And now the game seems very daunting. So yes, I love that question. And I absolutely, if that's the game you want to play, why not? Why not? Right.
So if anyone actually wants to come on and speak rather than typing into the chat box, you're quite welcome to do that too. You just have to let us know that that's what you want to do by either typing or putting your hand up.
I love what Lucy Palmer said. She said, I love the idea I have an infinite quarters and I don't need to find my one purpose. That is brilliant because that's something that some of us have been taught. You need to know your one purpose, one goal, one guiding light. And that to me sounds, well, it's just not true in my experience. right? I've here's a great example is I have a book. My first book I wrote was called The Happiness Formula. And it was about strategies and tools and techniques for happiness. And then I realized for a few months after I wrote that book, and I learned what we call the three principles or discovered them, everything I had written in that book was actually incorrect. I just didn't see it the way I did it at that time. And I realized, I have two ways of doing this: beat myself up for a book that I've written that no longer serves me, or be grateful for what I've seen and now go and write a book about what I've seen now. And now every book I've written, I've seen more. Now, does
Mm.
that mean the stuff that I've written is worthless or not useful? Maybe or maybe not. But what's more important is that I know that every day I can write a new book about my life, a fresh chapter of what I'm seeing. And so that to me is more amazing, the fact that I have that ability, that today a new Amir can show up with new possibilities versus look at what the old Amir did and maybe he didn't do it right then. And so now he's not going to be able to do it right now. That doesn't even occur to me. So if this new Amir wants to dip his toes into something, he will. If this new Amir wants to take a break and not dip his toes in at all, he will. And if this new Amir wants to do anything in life, he can. And so can you, and for all the listeners listening, because that's what we have up for grabs. We have wisdom that will steer us towards the new insight. We have a capacity called insights that allows us to see more of into life. And we have a check engine light or a mechanism that lets us know when we're in a lot of thinking that we're in a lot of thinking. What a cool mechanism. That's brilliant how the design was built for us. And all we have to do, whoever built this designer system, is saying, don't worry about the one about the thinking. That's giving you, the creative force that gives you some avenues of good ideas, and other avenues it just tells you stupid things that you don't have to worry about. Like a radio station. Sometimes you have a good song come on. Sometimes the song that's playing is not so good. But that's what the nature of a radio station is supposed to do. A radio show. It's going to play music for you. And our design is built to play thoughts for us. And some of them are useful and some of them aren't. How we know what's useful is it has a different feeling. It has a sense to it that we innately know to be true. Right. And that to me is what I've kind of become more in tune to. The one that feels spinny has a different feel to it. The one that feels spinny has an urgency to it when I'm in bed at 12 in the morning, even though it's talking about what I needed a week later. And I'm telling you this from real time because I'm going through a lot of stuff at work. And right now I'm in a lot of spinning, but I'm still able to have this conversation with you, even though the reason I was late today is because I literally had gotten off the phone with an attorney 2 minutes before I jumped on this call. But nothing stopped me from having this experience with you because I know, in spite of the thinking I came into this call with, I can still have this connective call with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because, for example, in a similar sort of way, over the last year, maybe 18 months even, I didn't know what I was going to do, right? I hadn't got a great income, and so you would think I need to do something, but I wasn't listening to that thinking anymore. I used to listen to that thinking all the time. I used to put a lot of pressure on myself too, and I should be writing books, and I should be doing this, and I should be, and now those thoughts still come, right? So there were, over that last year or 18 months, I had, well, now that you do know about this, now that you do know about this understanding, you can write a book. You should be writing books. You could be writing all these books that you were going to write before. You could, and yet there was, and I could have, and I did start writing some of them, but there was a lot of stuff going on, and I thought, okay, I'll just get on with doing the gardening. which I was really enjoying, you know. And I was learning about permaculture and learning about all sorts of stuff that I didn't know about before, and really, really enjoying getting outside and doing the gardening and doing all of this stuff. And every now and then I'd have some thoughts about, well, maybe it's time that you should do something now. You know, maybe you should be doing something now. And that this would happen every now and then I'd think, no, I'll just do some more gardening. Right? And then one day, completely out of the blue, I woke up and thought, oh, okay, so now I'm going to do this big project of inviting 100 speakers to speak. I'm going to get 100 speakers to speak about this and record them, and then really get this out to young people. And like that came out of nowhere, really. But it came, like you said, it came with a with a with an excited feeling, not a, you know, that I really wanted to do this, and that it sounded fun. It sounded fun. It sounded like a, and I had no idea how I was going to do it. You know, like 100 people in 2 months, and in a very, you know, so that was in March that I decided to do it and started at the beginning of May. But like you said, you just go, and what one of the things that kept going through my mind was I remembered Jacqueline Hollows talking at the last conference in London that I went to, talking about when she first went into prisons to talk about this understanding in prisons, and how people hadn't done that before, and she had no idea what she was going to do, but she just felt like it was something she really wanted to do, and she just took it one day at a time and one step at a time, and like you said, you just go give it a try and see what happens. And the great thing is now that I know that there really is no failure. If it doesn't happen that way, something else will happen. Yeah, you know, that's the I have a sort of a long-term idea about this, but on the way, all sorts of things have changed. Even in this, all sorts of things have changed, and I was like, oh right. And in the past, I would have been, oh no, it's got to be this way. No, it's got to be this. No, it hasn't. It can just be how it is.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I love that. And looking back, you know, I realize I'm really not that good at knowing what the right path is until I actually did the right and wrong ones. In other words, there's a lot of times where I thought I was going in the right direction because I thought so, and it was not as conducive as I thought. And there's times where I'm like, screw it, I'll just give it a shot. For example, recovery center. One of the therapists said, would you like to work at the recovery center? And I said, I have no idea what I'm doing and all this stuff. And there was a moment where I said, I don't think this is right for me, but I'll give it a shot. You know, I'll try it for a week. Well, I've been there now for 4 years. Who would have known? Who would have known looking back if someone would have said, Amir, when you're 36 years old, you will be working for 4 years in a recovery center, even though you have no background in recovery and you've never went to school for recovery and you've never used substances. I would have said, that's impossible. Get out of here. That could never happen. But how did it happen? It just happened to go grab a coffee with one of the therapists. So could I have planned it that way? No. What I will tell you is, more importantly than deciding how to choose life or whatever, the more we're available to life, the more options tend to show up. The other option is that we're available to every thought that will come to our mind, and we're not available to life. So you're either in life or you're in thought. Those are the two options. And it turns out when we spend more of our time in life, opportunities show up, ideas show up, friendships show up, things, you know, connections show up, right? Dates show up, whatever you want to say, right? And so when people say to me now, like, I get all that, but what about when you're anxious? I say, I go grab a coffee while I'm anxious. Well, what about when you're feeling insecure? I go grab coffee while I'm insecure. Well, what about when you're depressed? Well, maybe I'll go grab a coffee or depressed, or maybe I'll read a book while I'm depressed. In other words, I still do life in spite of how I feel. And that was never an option before, because I thought as soon as I have a state of mind that I don't necessarily agree with, I need to go fix it, figure it out, dive in and see what's really happening. But who's doing the talking? Who's going to do the fixing? One thought is going to fix another. And so I started to go, well, if I don't worry about the first thought, then I don't need a second thought to fix the first one if it's made from the same material. And that freed me back to get back into life. Because that's where the juice is. That's where the money is. That's where the magic is. So that's all I've got. That's as I mean, there's not much to it. I told you, my wife always said, you spend more time in life. I think that's why you get the opportunities you get. Because I'm too dumb to spend most of my time in thought. Now, I don't say I don't. There are times where I really do, but for the most part, I've realized I have a lot more games to play. The arcade is in life.
And what is that material that thought is made out of?
What is that material? Well, you're going to have to ask somebody else, because I have no idea. I'm going to make something up. I don't know. Well, if I give you an answer, which is ironic, I'll never give you an objective answer, because the same answer I'm going to give you is made by the same material that's going to give you the answer. So I can't actually tell you what it is, because I'm using it to tell you what it is. Does that make sense? So that's a whole nother rabbit. I don't know how to get into, because we can't look at it objectively, so to speak, because I'm using it to tell you what I think it is.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. And I wasn't expecting an answer for it. It's just that you said that thought is made out of the same material as that thought. And I'm like, yeah, what is that then?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just thought.
What is it? I think that's a good question. And that's why, the best, and that's why the best thing we have is sharing our experiences from what we have seen, because we can become conceptual about it. And for some reason, that's never really been useful. I've just seen like when the firefighter told me, looked me in the eye and said, I work with people, whether I'm afraid, hungry, jealous, hurt, angry, confused, depressed, I still have to clock in and do my job. I realized he doesn't really use a state of mind to do his work. And that affected me. That made me go, oh, now if he would have told me a conceptual thing, you see what I do at work, and here's the 3 steps, it probably wouldn't have resonated. So, and so why I'm saying that, I know we're almost at the end of the call, is for those listening, see if something about what you and I said resonates and it's fundamentally true for you. Not, well, that's a good idea. If it's a good idea, throw it away. I'm not interested in good ideas. I want to see if there's a deep yes to that, like a wow, that actually, I don't know why this makes sense, but I'm gonna see if it makes sense. I'm just gonna sit with it and see if it's fundamentally true. Now, if it's fundamentally true for you, the next step, if you so choose to take it, is this fundamentally true for everybody else? Or people that are in a lot of thinking, do they show up differently than people that tend to go and not have much thought at all about certain things? And how is that experience different in those domains? And see if people show up differently fundamentally. And you might start to catch on that thought is a very big player in the way how life shows up.
Very good. Thank you very much. So I don't think there's any more questions there, are there? I can see. Oops, where's that gone? No more questions or comments, I think.
Judy mentioned that this has been such an impactful conversation. I am one of the best looking panelists that you've interviewed. Thank you, Judy. You know what? I will take that. And hold on. She also wrote, my wife is so lucky to have me. Judy, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate everything you said.
That's so good. I love having Judy on. It's really good.
Yeah, she's great.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Amir. And if anyone wants to find out any more about Amir, there is plenty of links and plenty of information on the website at thesecretofeverything.com. So you can find out from there.
Thank you for having me. This was such an awesome call. And to be honest with you, I was so afraid of being on this call because I had so much on my head. But just connecting with another human being is one of the most beautiful things. And, if you are really struggling and you're on this call, just speak with people, speak to friends and families, just connect with people, and, maybe re-listen to some of these calls, and just know you're not alone, and you do have access to so many resources, including this. So thank you so much for doing this from all of us, from the bottom of our heart.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, goodbye everyone for today, and see you next time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye then.